I have to do that all from the beginning?
Good afternoon. This is Steve Smith talking. I apologize for the sound issue. So we're a few minutes behind here. So I'm going to just turn it directly to Cliff Ennico, who's our speaker today, so we can do this on time. And as you know from signing up, this subject is time management. Cliff Ennico is speaking. Cliff's been a speaker of ours several times, and he's, as he likes to say, a small business expert and lawyer and author, and he's very, very happy to have Cliff with us here today. Again, I'm sorry for the sound foul up at the beginning, so we'll try to recover our time here. If you have questions during Cliff's presentation, please enter them in the chat room, and we'll get to them at the end, which will be probably about 10 minutes of one or maybe 5 minutes of one. Okay, fine, thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Cliff now.
Okay. Thank you, Steve, and thank you again for that wonderful intro. For the sake of people who are just signing on right now, let me begin sort of at the beginning, and if we run a few minutes over, we'll be happy to do that because I want to give you the benefit of a full hour. First of all, as you hear from that wonderful intro that Steve just gave me, I do a lot of different things. I have a law practice with very demanding clients. I have a syndicated column. I write all these books. I travel around the country 20 times, 30 times a year, talking to business groups, venture capital clubs. I have a very, very busy life. And when you do all the things that I do, time management becomes an extreme challenge. It really does. I'm very happy that SCORE asked me to do this program because unlike some of the things that I talk about for SCORE, this is something I do literally every day of my life. In fact, sometimes several times a day. And I will confess to you, I am not holding myself out here as the world's leading authority on time management. I think people like Stephen Covey and Paula Rubenstein have that honor. I don't. There are days and entire weeks where I don't do it very well. I'll be honest with you. And that's going to be one of my messages today, that there's no such thing as perfect time management. That animal does not exist. So without any further ado, let's move forward here. Okay, first of all, the usual legal disclaimers. The most important thing here, this isn't really a legal or tax presentation, but I may be getting in during the Q&A. Some of you may have legal or tax questions. I'll certainly try to answer them as best I can. But the thing you have to remember here is that nothing we do on these webinars should be construed as legal or tax advice. There's a very big difference between saying, here's what the law says, and here is what you should do. That's a very big difference, and, anything that I say on this program should not be taken as something you should do. That is advice that can only be given from a lawyer, CPA, tax advisor, or other professional who is local and is licensed to practice in your community. Okay, time management is my biggest challenge every day, but it's also your biggest challenge. Time is the most valuable asset you have. Believe it or not, it's more valuable than money. Now, that's a cliche, but as I get older, I see more and more just how true it is. If you make a bad deal, or if you make a bad trade, or if you do a little work for a client that doesn't pay you and you don't get paid, those are all things that can be fixed sooner or later. You can always make it up on the next trade, on the next investment, on the next client. But if you spend a month of your life doing something that doesn't give you what you want, where you didn't get what you wanted to get out of it, that is a month of your life that nobody will ever give you back again. That is time that is gone. No one ever gives us more of it. And you never, ever want to waste the time that you have. That's what time management is all about, avoiding waste. You do not want to waste the precious time that we have on this earth. And everybody is time-starved these days. The whole reason you're on this program right now is because you're having trouble managing your time. You don't have enough time. You're not spending enough time on the things that you feel are important. We'll talk about that in a minute. This is why you are taking this program. You want to get more control over your life and over your time. And today we all have a big enemy. And forgive me, I know some people from Silicon Valley may be listening to this. Please don't take it personally. But technology, our modern technology, has made this harder and harder to do. Don't get me wrong. I love today's technology. I could not do all the things that I do without a laptop, a smartphone, and all the email and all the tools that we have. They're wonderful, but they can also rob you of your time because they also give other people a chance to interrupt you when you least want to be interrupted. A ringing smartphone, an incoming text message or email, or a ping on your portable device is a lunatic screaming, me, now, I am more important. Stop what you are doing. Cliff, stop it. Whatever you're doing, stop it. I am more important. Deal with me now. I am your top priority now. Me now. That's exactly what it's doing. Even though I'm working on a contract that I promised the client I'd get out today, we got to get this thing out to the client. Even though I'm giving a talk in Las Vegas to 500 eBay sellers, I am getting these constant interruptions. And even sometimes I don't know who these people are that are trying to interrupt me. Who is just trying to get a piece of my time that I don't even know? Okay, I call them time vampires. These are people who suck the time out of your life, and they seem to be everywhere, and technology enables those people. So just a warning, what I'm going to be talking about a lot in this program is not going to be politically correct. I'm going to be telling you how to prioritize and triage your time, and it's not always going to be nice. One of my messages here, and I'm going to repeat it at least 5 times, the more you try to be nice to everybody, the more difficulty you're going to have managing your time, and that is just a fact of life. Why do people lose control of their time? Okay? Well, some people are just not organized. They cannot prioritize. Everything seems to be of equal importance to them. You know, the cat that needs to be let out is just as important as the client that you're on the phone with at that time. That is not the case. You know, one of the tricks of time management is realizing that some things are more important than others. They try to do too much at once. Multitasking is a myth, people. And I want to say this right now, especially for those of you who have Y chromosomes. Okay? If you are a male human being or if you identify as male in your gender, you should not be multitasking. Okay? Men, Y chromosomes who try to multitask are like the North Koreans trying to host a peace conference. It is not going to happen. You know, do not do it. Women do it slightly better than men do, but even women cannot do it. Okay, we're going to talk about that in just a second. Multitasking is a myth. At any given time, you can only be doing one and only one thing, and we'll talk about that in a second. But here's the biggest reason why people lose control of their time: they're too nice. They cannot say no. They allow themselves to be interfered with and to be interrupted. Because let's face it, a lot of time vampires are nice people. They might be friends. They might be lovers. These are not evil, sadistic people that are trying to hack into your life. These are people you love and you feel you have some obligation to. And it's very hard to say no to those people. To be successful at time management, you have to be a bit ruthless. Not everyone is worthy of your time right now. And that is the lesson you have to mention. You have to prioritize people, not just things, and not just time. For those of you, I'm not going to get into this on this talk. I have an excellent YouTube video. It's on my YouTube channel called 3 Personality Traits All Successful Entrepreneurs and Small Business Owners Must Develop. I've also done it for SCORE over the years. This will talk about ruthlessness in much greater detail than I can today, but it is essential if you are going to be a successful time manager. Okay. One of the best books that was ever written was by a guy named Stephen Covey back in the 1980s. It was called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I owe this to him. This is not original. He was the one who originated this concept. One of his big arguments was that people have trouble managing their time because they can't distinguish between things that are urgent and things that are important. And he actually put together a 2x2 matrix with urgent and not urgent, important and not important. And there are 4 categories of these things. Urgent and important tasks always seem to be done. We tend not to have any trouble getting things done that are immediate demands and that are important to us. You know, if the boss comes into your office and says, Cliff, I need that report in 15 minutes, you are going to get that report done in 15 minutes. That is urgent and it's important. If you want to keep your job, you're going to satisfy your boss. You're going to make him happy. Also, we're pretty good at prioritizing things that are non-urgent and non-important. If the pressure is off us and it's not something we really care about, those things almost never get done. In my case, going to the gym. Okay, although that's changing, though, as I get a little bit older. Okay, non-urgent, non-important tasks, we have no trouble at all blowing those off as human beings. The problem happens in the middle here, where we're faced with tasks that are urgent but not important and tasks that are important but not urgent. Most human beings tend, when they're in that situation where they're faced with that choice between 2 things, they default to the urgent but not important task. They do the thing that somebody is pressuring them to do but isn't really important to their life. And the stuff that is important, the longer range projects, for me, planning my next book, updating my YouTube channel and my social media. I mean, these are all things that are important, but they're not urgent. They don't have to be done right now, this very second. Those are the things that tend to get blown off in favor of the tasks that are urgent, but are not really important to your long-term growth and development. One of Covey's great arguments is, in order to manage your time much better, whenever you're faced with this choice, focus on the important but not urgent tasks and play down the urgent but not important tasks. It's not easy to do, and I really, if you have to buy one classic book on time management, that would be it. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Still in print, you can get it anywhere. Okay, here are my 5 steps to becoming a Time Lord. For those of you Doctor Who fans, you know what I'm talking about, and if not, watch a couple of episodes of Doctor Who. You'll know what a Time Lord is. Okay, understand, first of all, that you are in control of your time. Number 1, understand that at any given moment you can do only one thing. That's avoiding multitasking. Get the word multitasking out of your dictionary. It does not exist. Plan each day and week Develop protocols for being interrupted. Understand that perfect time management is impossible. Always build in room for error. And we'll tell you how to do that. Let's walk through each of the steps. First of all, you are in control. Believe it or not, you are already in control of your time. You decide what you're going to do and not do at any given moment in the day. This is something a lot of people don't realize. You are already in control. Nobody can interrupt your flow without your consent, except, of course, for technology, like we had earlier in this program. Nobody can interrupt your flow without your consent. If you stop doing something to answer an email or a text message, that is your decision. You decided to stop doing X and to start doing Y. You can always ignore that email or text message if you want to. You are in control. Eleanor Roosevelt once said that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. My corollary to that is no one can interrupt your flow and help you get out of your time management program without your approval. You decide on that. Your daily mantra, and this is something I say, believe it or not, to myself every morning when I get up. My clients are important. I will get their work done, but my time is more important than anyone else's. Nobody's time is more important than my own. Now, that's a little selfish and maybe a little bit arrogant. I apologize if, as I said, some of this stuff's going to be politically incorrect. But the first step to time management is to understand that nothing in this world is more important than your time. If you have a deadly disease and you have 6 months to believe, every second of time during that 6 months is going to be important to you, and that is the way you should be living your life. Pretend that you only have a month to live. Believe me, it concentrates your mind wonderfully. Now, I'm an independent contractor. This is a little bit of a legal thing. I must be allowed to control my time. If somebody can interrupt me at any time and insist that I do their stuff before everyone else's, they become my employer. They are directing and controlling my time under the IRS guidelines, and there's a risk that I will not be considered an independent contractor if I let people do that to me. But my big thing is, and this is a lesson I've learned over many years, the client who wants 24/7 access in real time is a client not worth having. One of the easiest ways a client can turn me off on our first phone call when they're interviewing me and I'm interviewing them for the first time is, okay, Cliff, before we go any further, I want your cell phone number. The minute they ask for that, I know this is a client I do not want. This is a time vampire. This is someone who insists that he's the most important person of my life. And I have two responses to that. One is kind of snarky. If it's a client that I don't really want, I'll say, well, okay, the deal is it's $1,000 an hour with a minimum monthly fee of $10,000. If you want access to my time like that, well, I sure as heck want you paying my mortgage every month. And that usually stops the conversation, and usually it's the end of the conversation, but that's okay because I never wanted the client anyway. But if it's a client I do want, I tend to use humor and say, well, let me ask you this. I mean, in a pinch, would you rather I answer your emails or get your work done? And it's a good line. This is it. Because let's face it. At any given time, I have to concentrate on what I'm doing. If I'm in the middle of a contract, I cannot be disturbed on that. Or if I'm, like right now, I am doing this program. Right now, I am not thinking about anything else. My cell phone is off. My tech is off. I am not going to think about anything until about 10 minutes after 1 when this program concludes. And I am not allowing anything to disrupt that. My clients, if anybody's trying to reach me on my cell phone right now, it's going to voicemail. I will call them as soon as the program is over, but there's nothing that we can do about that. And the clients have to be willing to accept that you cannot be interrupted in 24/7 time. Okay. So get control of your time. Understand that you are in control. You take responsibility for your time. That's my message here. Take responsibility for the time that you have. It is yours. You are not going to waste it, and it's only going to be done doing those things that you feel are important at that particular time. Step number 2, multitasking is a myth, especially if you have a Y chromosome, but for everybody as well. Nobody at any given moment, don't get me wrong, people can certainly work on multiple projects at the same time. At any given time I'm working, I got 5 things on my calendar that I have to do in the course of a given day. But at any given moment in time, right here, right now, you could only be doing one thing. Are you doing the right thing right now? Now, if you're typing and doing something on your computer while you're listening to this webinar, you just missed something important. Okay, so I'm going to repeat it. If you are trying to multitask, you cannot multitask. You can only do one thing well. If you are answering emails right now, that's all that's going to get done. If you're listening to me, that is the only thing that will get done. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Being a Zen master helps somewhat, by the way. All of you, whatever your religious background or spiritual background or faith, it's a good idea to study up on Zen, not as a religion, but as a discipline, a mental discipline. When I was a young man, I actually did some Zen studies, and I found it very, very helpful. What the Zen masters teach is that there is nothing more important than this exact moment. There is nothing, not 5 seconds ago when I began this sentence, not 5 seconds from now when I finish this sentence. We are all going through life 1 second, one split second at a time. And nothing, what Zen does is it focuses you on putting the maximum amount of energy and attention and mindfulness and wakefulness into this specific moment. That's why when you read a lot of Zen stories, a young monk will say, well, what is the Buddha? What is the meaning of life? And the Zen master takes a stick and whacks him in the head. You know, he's not doing that because he's vicious or a sadist. He's doing that because he's trying to get the monk to focus on what is happening right now. When someone throws a rock at you, you don't think, you duck. And you are, at that point, totally focused in the moment, and that's what the Zen masters are trying to do, is to focus you on that. A great book, Zen Flesh, Zen Bones by Paul Reps. It's nothing but Zen stories, a great way to understand Zen. Another great book, which I'll mention too, Dale Carnegie, the same guy that wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People almost 100 years ago. He wrote another great book too called How to Avoid Worrying and Start Living. That's another one of his great bestsellers. And one of his first things that he teaches there is to live your life in day-type compartments, or I would add hour-type compartments. Don't worry about anything yesterday or tomorrow. Focus on today. Focus on the hour, the minute, the second. Are you getting maximum value out of every second of your life? Okay, step 3, plan your day. I use an hourly planner. There are some excellent free ones online. This is where you can find some of these online. There's an excellent one for Android smartphones, for iPhone. For weekly planning, I still use paper. I hate to say it. I use a Dayminder calendar. It costs about $20 at any Staples, Office Depot, Office Max, place like that. There are other sources we can do this online. I don't care how you do it, but here are the 2 key rules when it comes to planning. Number 1, budget time when you will do nothing but answer emails and phone calls at least twice a day. I budget time for this. Okay, twice a day. In my case, I do it late morning and late afternoon. I will do nothing but catch up on emails, catch up on phone messages. If you take text messages, catch up on those too. I personally don't take text messages ever, but that's a decision you can make. Some of my younger millennial clients insist that I do business that way, so I'm doing it more and more these days. And then outside of your time blocks, ignore them as best you can. So in my case, I do it from 11 to 12 in the morning and from 4 to 5 in the afternoon. If I can finish it earlier, great. If I go over, well, I'll tell you in a minute how I handle that. Secondly, block out times when you will not look at your technology at all. Now, again, this is somewhat controversial. Some of you have lives where you simply can't do that. I personally never answer emails or voice messages after 3 p.m. on Fridays, afternoon on Saturdays. I do work a half day on Saturdays, or any time on Sunday, unless I have a deal closing on Monday. If a client has something that requires 100% of my attention on Monday, I will work a couple of hours on Sunday. That can't be avoided. Why 3 p.m. on Fridays, by the way? And that's just unique to me. That may not apply to you, but I've just learned over the years that every business has a rhythm. And one of my rhythms is people call their lawyers between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. on Friday afternoons with the goal of ruining their weekend. I have learned this. People always seriously, half the phone calls that I get from my lawyer clients during a week are between like 2 and 6 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And what they're trying to do is they've got something on their desk that's sitting around for a week, and they're hoping that I will bust my chops on the weekend getting it done for them. So my simple solution to that problem is I don't answer the phone from 3 p.m. until 6 p.m. Now, some of you are in a position where you can't do that, but if you do have a situation where you know that time vampires have a peak time slot, try to avoid being available at that time slot. It works extremely well. Include in your email signature line, put in office hours. Hi, you've reached the offices of Cliff Ennico. Office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturdays. That helps people manage their expectations. If they're calling you Sunday afternoon, they know you're not going to pick up. It's a good thing to do. Another thing is consider charging a premium rate for being responsive on weekends. If a client, on the rare occasion where a client has an emergency on Friday that I need to kill a weekend on to get done for them, I don't charge my normal rate. I charge double my normal rate. And I let them know that up front, saying, well, just to let you know, you're ruining my weekend. I'm going to have to make some plan changes here. It's going to be this much an hour. Can you live with that? And 9 times out of 10, all of a sudden the deadline becomes a lot more flexible when they know they have to pay for that overtime. I mean, like anybody else, charge overtime. Factory workers do it. Why shouldn't you charge as well? Give it some thought. Okay, here's a typical day plan for me. I'm not going to go into this in a lot of detail. This is just an example of how I do it. Notice 10:30 to 11:30, and I use military time because it's easier for me. 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 10:30 to 11:30 in the morning. I block off time for answering emails and phone calls. 11:30 to 12:30, I'm doing this more and more. I've only started doing this recently. I've had a couple of health scares in the last year, so now for at least an hour every day, unless, of course, I'm doing a program like this, I try to do at least an hour of walking or an hour at the gym if the weather's bad. I am budgeting that time to get that done. It's become a very important priority for me. I budget time for meals, giving a program, and stuff like that. Also, look at from 7:30 to 8 o'clock in the morning, I plan my day that day. Now, of course, I have my weekly planner too, but I also find it's helpful first thing in the morning, look at your calendar, and I ask myself two questions. How much can I get done today? But the second question is, who's going to get disappointed today? Who desperately needs a piece of my time that I absolutely cannot squeeze into today, and how am I going to deal with that so I don't have an angry client, an angry boss, an angry whatever? How am I going to manage that? Plan some time each day for planning. Okay, we're still on planning. Step number 3. Here's how I prioritize my email inbox. So let's say I get to one of these blocks of times where I'm going to do nothing but answer emails or text messages. How do I do it? Well, first of all, I perform triage. Which ones am I going to answer now? Which ones am I going to answer later? And this shouldn't shock anybody, which ones am I never going to answer? There's a famous New Yorker cartoon that shows a guy on the phone. He's trying to schedule something, and he says, Thursday won't work. How about never? Is never good for you? It's by a cartoonist named Robert Mankoff, in fact, at the New Yorker. In fact, they actually have a poster of this, which I have on my office wall. It's never good for you. And I gave you the link here where you can actually buy the poster. It's actually a good thing to have on your wall. It's a constant reminder that not everybody is deserving of your time. Rule number 1 when it comes to answering emails, do not fall into the trap of answering them in chronological order or reverse chronological order. Here's how I do it. I use a different system. I use Gmail. I get them all in front of me, and I first get rid of the obvious junk. I mean, every day, every hour, I'm getting at least 1 or 2 messages that really belong in the spam folder. I don't even look at them. I highlight them. I send them to the spam folder. I do not even think about them. Do not read your junk emails. That is a major waste of time. Second, I look quickly down them, and if there's an email there that can be answered in 30 seconds or less, I say 60 seconds here, but I'm a fast typist, so for me it's 30 seconds, 25 words or less. Someone wants to schedule? No, can't do it. How about Thursday? If you can answer an email in 10 words or less, get rid of those and then get them out of your inbox. Put them somewhere else. Put them in one of your file folders. Then lastly, when you're down to just the emails that require a substantive response, something you can't just blow off in a few seconds, answer as many of them as you can and bill for your time. I'm a lawyer, so I was trained as a young lawyer to use timesheets. So for me, this is easy. You should use timesheets as well. Find out how long it takes you to answer the average email and include that in your bill to the client. I am doing this now more and more. Every time I send a bill out to the client, there's a line item at the bottom, 10 emails at $30 each, $300. I bill a tenth of an hour of my time for answering an email. Now, not just any email, of course. Somebody who's trying to schedule a call and we're going back and forth trying to figure out, when the call's going to take place. I never bill for those. But if a client asks a substantive legal question and I am answering and giving advice and asking questions, substantively, I feel I should charge for my time for that, and you shouldn't be embarrassed to do that as well. If there's time left over within your hour of time, answer the remaining emails. Once you've gone through the junk, the things that would have a quick answer, the things that are important to answer. If there's time left over, answer your remaining emails and do that in chronological order. Older emails first. I always try to respond to all emails within 24 hours, and I try to stick to that. For common email inquiries, I get a lot of people who watch my YouTube videos, and basically they're looking for free legal advice. They'll send me an email, hey Cliff, love your video, I got this problem I want to deal with. I have a stock response. I basically say, thank you, I'm glad you're supporting all my efforts. Just so you know, my time is very, very valuable. If you do want to spend some time, I'll be happy to give you a half an hour of my time on the phone for a discounted rate. I'm happy to do that. But what I do, rather than doing that, typing that message each time, I actually have it as a Word file. With just a blank for the name, hi blank, and then this message. I have it, and then whenever I have a message like that, I cut and I paste it into the email reply and just fill in the person's name. It takes 10 seconds to do that. Develop some stock responses to common email inquiries and use the stock responses. That saves you a lot of time. If you do run out of time, let's say you're at the end of your hour now, and you still have 3 emails that have to be done, send them. Do not go into your next block of time answering them. That's my message to you. Don't get out of your flow. Send a short message saying, I'm backed up today. I'll get back to you later today or early tomorrow. In my experience, even in this day and age, most people can wait 24 hours for a response. If they can't, it's probably a client you should not have. Unless, of course, they're one of your best clients. We'll talk about that in a minute. Step number 4, no matter how well you plan your day, interruptions will happen. Interruptions will happen no matter what you do. And so you have to develop what I call interruption protocols. These are rules, little protocols for when you will be interrupted and when you will not be interrupted. What situations will knock you off your plan and which ones won't? One of my favorite people is a local CPA up here. She's a mother of 3 very active kids. And she works out of her home as I do. She doesn't have a staff. She doesn't have assistants. It's just her and her PC, just like me. Well, during tax season, obviously, there are times when she has to go into that office at 7 in the morning and not emerge until 10 or 11 o'clock at night when she's doing 1 million tax returns for people. So one of her protocols, whenever one of the kids says, Mommy, something's happening, she yells out, is there blood? And I love it. If the answer is yes, she interrupts. If the answer is no, and she just says, deal with it, I'm busy, and she goes back on. And she does this with her children. Now, of course, I'd hate to think of the nursing home where they're going to put her when the time inevitably comes. But this is what she does. Is there blood? How serious is this interruption? Is the cat just getting into the cheese, or is somebody dying out there, or are limbs missing? Get a sense of how significant and how critical it is, and that helps you determine whether you want to break. Here are some of my protocols. These are some of the things that will get me off my daily plan. I mean, again, this is just what I do. I'm not saying this is what you should do, but if you're in a service business like I am, you'll probably be sympathetic with at least some of this. I do a lot of work on small business acquisitions, buying and selling small businesses, M&A type work. Those deals get very intense right before the closing. Within 48 to 72 hours prior to a closing, I would say I'm spending 50% of my available time each day getting those details managed so the deal can close smoothly. So any message regarding an acquisition or other deal closing within the next 48 hours is something that will become my immediate top priority. I will try to answer those emails as promptly as I can because things are moving a lot faster than just days. They're moving like at an hourly clip, and I have to keep up with it. Projects under extreme time pressure that can be done within an hour or less. I have a lot of clients who are for lack of a better word, downsized executives. They're in between jobs. They have career transitions right now. And when they get an offer of employment or a consulting gig with a big company, this is the first chance they've had in months to generate revenue for their families. They want that agreement reviewed within 10 minutes. When it happens. So I, as a courtesy to them, because I do have a lot of them, I will interrupt for that. If I have a time block set out for client A and client B sends me an email saying, hey, Cliff, I finally got a consulting gig after 6 months. Here's the contract. Could you please look at it today? I will substitute him for client A and put him into the daily calendar because he will appreciate the quick turnaround. But I also know that I can do that in an hour or less. It doesn't take me more than an hour to look at an employment agreement or a consulting agreement. So it's not going to eat into my day 2 months. A client that interrupts with a project that's going to take 10 hours is a different kettle of fish. But if it's only something that's going to take an hour or a half an hour of my time, I will adjust my plan to make that happen on a same-day or next-day basis because that client desperately needs quick turnaround. Calls from prospective clients looking for a lawyer. When a client is looking to hire a lawyer and they're calling me for the first time, I am not usually the only lawyer they are calling. Somebody gave them several names, including mine. I'm in a competitive situation. I want to be the first one to return that phone call. So a prospective new client that is looking for a lawyer. Now, an existing client who has a new matter for me, that's a different kettle of fish. That I wait and I do it during my email block of time. But if it's a new client looking for a lawyer, I'm in a competitive situation, so I will respond to that. Messages from key clients generating $5,000 or more in revenue each month. I do have 3 clients that provide me with more than $5,000 worth of revenue each month. They are priority clients. They are helping me pay my mortgage each month, so they deserve a certain amount of priority. So when one of them needs something, I will tend to bump other clients who are not paying me as much money to give them. Let's face it, that's important. 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. That 20% needs to be managed a lot. You need to devote a lot more of your time to them than you do the other 80%. Here's another Cliff Ennico rule of thumb, and it may sound a little bit cynical, but it is very, very true, at least in my world. 80% of the problems you have managing your clients come from the bottom 20% of your revenue base. The clients that give you the most demanding clients are very often the ones who don't give you the revenue that you need. Now, that sounds like a little bit cynical, but if you think about it, they're the ones who know they have to scream louder and be a bit more of a nudge because they know that your nudge is a pain in the neck, by the way. They know they have to be that way because they know they're not your time priority, and they figure that by calling you every hour on the hour, you'll give them a higher priority than otherwise. But these are the only people. I'd much rather spend time with a client who's giving me $10,000 a month than a client who only calls me once a year with a $100 matter and then takes 90 days to pay me. That's all I'm saying here. So if you think I'm too cynical, that's where I am. Last but not least, queries from journalists looking for content. I got a lot of calls from freelance journalists who are doing articles. Usually they're for trade journals on some topic relating to small business. They found me on the web. I prioritize them because I used to be a journalist. I used to write for a newspaper years before I went to law school. I was actually a crime reporter for a daily newspaper in Yonkers, New York back in the 70s. I know what it's like to be on deadline. And I know what it is when you need that one quote and you only got 15 minutes to get the quote. So when I get a call or an email from a journalist who's doing an article, I try to return those as much as possible because I know they're on deadline, and I want to get the reputation of being, hey, you can always call Cliff Ennico. He'll always get back to you in a couple of hours. I want that reputation. That's very important to me. So so develop protocols for interruptions is my point. Interruptions are going to happen. You can't do anything about them, but budget time for them. Last but not least, step 5. Understand that perfect time management is impossible. Even I do not do it well sometimes. I don't. There are days, there are sometimes entire weeks. I will share with you that I was in the Midwest giving a talk this week. I flew back to Connecticut last night, and my flight was delayed several times. I didn't get home until about 4 o'clock in the morning. So needless to say, I had to do a lot of adjusting of my time today. Let's just put it that way. Today is not perfect. Things happen, as we say. Never schedule your time so tightly that there is no breathing room. I kind of figured this was going to happen to me today, so I deliberately did not schedule any meetings or any calls this morning. because I kind of figured out I'm supposed to get into the airport at midnight. It's going to take me an hour to drive home. If for some reason the plane is delayed, I got to get to SCORE and do this program at 12 o'clock. So I didn't want anything getting in the way of that. I want to be able to sleep, and as it turns out, I got in at 4 o'clock, I slept until 10:30, then I got up, I shaved, I got in my car, and I drove down here to do the program. That's what you have to do. Expect that there will be problems, especially airlines. Never assume that an airline flight will be on time. That's another Cliff Ennico rule of thumb. Build in time for that. If you must disappoint a client, remember I said before, one of the questions I ask myself every day is, who's going to be disappointed today, and how do I deal with that? If you must, send them a message. I have a very cute way of doing this. I send them a message saying, and whenever a client says, hey, Cliff, I haven't heard from you. I sent you an email yesterday. You haven't responded. I say, don't worry. You're not being ignored. You're only being prioritized. Most of my clients get the humor in that. It's a very human way of saying, I'm up to my ears in alligators right now. Don't worry. I'm aware of your deadline. We will not miss it. Don't worry. I'm a professional. But right now I can't give you the time you need until sometime later today or early tomorrow. Give them a time when you will respond and put it in your planner. Look, I really can't do this today, but I promise I'll call you first thing in the morning. And then put that, and if they say, okay, that's fine, put that in your planner. Don't disappoint. One of the surest ways to tick off a client legitimately is to say, I'll be there at a certain time, and then you're not there. Try to avoid that at all costs. If you say you're going to be somewhere at 9 a.m., do it, put it, and if something happens where you have to interrupt an emergency or a true benefit emergency, send the person a quick email. This is one of the few good things about text messages. I'm not fond of them, but when you do have a situation where, a client call is running over and you promise somebody else you'd call them, you can send a quick text message and say, look, I can't get this client off the phone. As soon as I get off the phone, I'm calling you, so don't get on the phone. Don't get on the phone. That's a very useful way of using text messages. Always meet the deadline. Whenever you impose a deadline, always make sure you meet it. Okay, if there never seems to be enough time to get things done, despite your best efforts and despite doing all the things I talked about on this program, consider raising your fees. Maybe your fees are too low. Maybe you're too popular. Maybe you should be a bit more exclusive. If you ask Martha Stewart to change a light bulb in your basement, okay, she's not going to do that for what a Mr. Handyman is going to charge. Okay, you have to be a little bit. I try not to be egotistic. I try not to have an ego, but there are certain projects that you really don't need a Cliff Ennico to do for you. There are certain projects where any local attorney will do, and keep that in mind. Now, and really, I'm very humble about that. Maybe you're just being a little bit too popular, and maybe you ought to raise your price so you can spend less time working on more valuable clients. Whole books have been written about that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Also, too, whenever you have a client that's high maintenance or low revenue, and low revenue, the person I was talking about a few minutes ago, the person who only gives you $100 worth of business a year, but when they call you, they want a response within an hour, those are clients you're better off without. I'm doing a better job as I get older of delegating those to other attorneys. I'm mentoring several younger attorneys right now who are just out of school. They couldn't find jobs. I'm working with them to sort of help them figure out how to run solo practices, and I'll sometimes refer people like that to them, because to them a $100 client's a big deal. To me, it is not. Don't get me wrong. Help these people out, but try to keep them to an absolute minimum, because they have a nasty tendency to become time vampires. Hire people, to do non-essential tasks. I'm mentoring these 3 other attorneys. I'm delegating some of my things to them. I let them keep the fee unless they need me to do consulting, in which case I charge for that. Hire people to do non-essential tasks. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then, or otherwise, consider changing your business model entirely. Nobody should be working 100 hours a week for $50,000 a year. Forgive me. If that is the life you are living right now, something is seriously wrong with your life at this point. You are a slave. You are an indentured servant at that point. You are so busy working for other people, you have no time for yourself. Nobody should ever live like that. Make believe you only have 30 days to live. What would you do if that was the case? That is the way you should be living your life. If you're not doing the things that are important to you and devoting your time to that, you are a slave. Change your life. No one should ever be that. They outlawed slavery back in the 1800s sometimes. Take advantage of that. You should not be doing that. Okay? Now, let's talk about delegation. I cover this in a couple of my YouTube videos. One of the things you have to do, if you have employees, if you have professionals, independent contractors that you work with, you have to distinguish between essential tasks and non-essential tasks. Essential tasks are the things that must be done perfectly or very well in order for your business to be successful. These are the things that must be done extremely well. Believe it or not, one of my essential tasks is getting my bills out every month. Where I bill my client and they have to pay me net 30. If I don't get those bills out on time, they have a nasty tendency to become a non-urgent task, and so they get delayed, and as a result, I don't get paid when I should get paid. If I take 45 days to get a bill out to you, you're going to take 45 days to pay me. You're not going to listen to my payable upon receipt line. If I'm slow getting my bills out, you're going to be slower paying me, and I don't want that. So, however busy I am, the last day of the month in the morning, this is when I budget it, I turn off the world and I do nothing but grind out my monthly invoices to clients. That's all I do. That's an essential activity for me. Essential tasks should not be delegated. You never delegate essential tasks to anyone else except if you have partners, your business partners, somebody who has a stake in the business. Why? Because employees, independent contractors, other people will never do as good a job as you will do yourself. And these are the activities, by definition, that are essential to be done extremely well. These must be done perfectly. These must be done extremely well, or else you're going to have problems with your business. Nobody other than you is going to give those tasks the time and attention that you will. No employee, no dog, no assistant, no virtual assistant, nobody else. These are the things that you must do yourself. Everything else, tasks that are non-essential, that do not have to be done extremely well or perfectly for the business to survive and grow, delegate. Delegate everything else. Your goal, I can't tell you how many businesses I've seen fail over the years because the founders got so distracted on a non-essential task that they let the essential task slide and they lost a client. Something bad happened. They got sued, because they weren't thinking properly. I can't tell you how many businesses I've seen fail because the founders couldn't distinguish between essential stuff and non-essential stuff. All the essential stuff you do yourself. The non-essential stuff, you delegate 100% of it to other people, even if you have to pay them to do it. It's time better spent. Your time is more valuable than what you are paying those people to do the non-essential tasks. You should be spending in business, you should be spending as much of your time as possible on managing and nurturing and worshiping the essential tasks that need to be done. Now, of course, being the cynic that I am, I would close this part of the program by saying one of the things you'll learn when you're in business as long as I am is that virtually everything you do is a non-essential task. The essential tasks are very, very few, maybe 2 or 3 that you have to do each month to keep your business going and to survive and grow. Most of the thing, we always have trouble distinguishing between what's important and not important, but that comes with time. Sooner or later, you realize that 95% of the things you do in the course of a day are non-essential activities and can probably be delegated to someone else. But that's a talk we will do on another day. So, here are some suggestions for further reading. This is the Stephen Covey book, which I strongly recommend to everyone. The Dale Carnegie book, even though it's almost 100 years old now, Dale Carnegie was a genius, and a lot of the stuff that he writes about is just as valid today as it was back in the 1920s when he wrote about it. Julie Morgenstern has written a lot on time management. These are 2 of my favorite books, especially Never Check Email in the Morning, which, by the way, is a great piece of advice because there's always one email in there that becomes a major interruption and drags you off your course for the entire day. When I wake up, there's actually a famous he's a retired Marine colonel who did a TED Talk just recently to recent graduates, and he did a wonderful thing. He said, the very first thing you do when you get up out of bed in the morning, make your bed. Do that before you do anything, before your first cup of coffee, before you go to the bathroom, before you do anything else. Just make your bed because it gets you into the mindset of accomplishing and being productive. 5 minutes after you wake up, you've already done one thing. You've made your bed. Okay, it's not a very important thing, but it gets you going and it focuses you on being task-oriented for the day. It's a very brilliant TED Talk. I apologize, I don't remember the name of the gentleman who did it. But if you can search online, search for TED Talk about making your bed, you probably will find it online. Time Management Hacks is a very good book. Alec McKenzie was a Canadian expert on time management. He wrote a bunch of classic books back in the 70s and 80s. These are 2 of his excellent books, which are still very good. Here are 2 of my excellent books. The Small Business Survival Guide has a couple of stories on time management, but it's mostly a collection of some of my best-selling columns that I write on how to manage your small business. The eBay Sellers Tax and Legal book, obviously this is for people who sell on eBay and Amazon. I am working on an updated version of this book to cover Amazon sellers because a lot of people are selling there on Etsy and other third-party platforms. And this is where you can find out more about me. And as long as you're not a time vampire, I will respond to these phone calls and to any email messages that I receive from you. Don't send me a text. I don't do text messages. But any email that you send me at this address, I will respond within 24 hours, one way or another, or at least I try to most of the time. So that's all I have to say about time management. Steve?
Thank you very much, Cliff. A timely presentation on time management, I might add, despite our problems at the beginning with the audio. A couple of questions here. First off, I'll kind of go backwards. There's a question, or actually a comment or a name, Tim Ferriss, that VinCat was inputted that I think was right during when you were talking about the books, and I'm just thinking maybe that he's referring to another author there. Does that ring any bells to you?
I've heard the name. The answer is yes, I've heard the name. He's another person. This means if you go on Amazon and search for time management in quotes, you're going to get 10,000 hits. What I tried to do in my suggestions for further reading was to highlight the books that I have found work for me, in a service business, and trying to do, a portfolio career with multiple streams of income. I have found their advice to be helpful, but there's a lot of very good time management gurus out there. Try to find one that lives in your world. If you're an eBay seller, try to find a time management expert who's an eBay seller. It's that simple.
Yeah, okay, good. Thanks, Cliff. There's another question here which really has to do with text messaging, and you made a lot of comments about the text messaging, and I know they can be, from my own personal experience, they can be a time sucker for sure. But from Daiwei Torre, Daiwei, I hope I pronounce your name correctly. He's saying if I miss a text message from a new client, and I find a day later that I call, but he never returns my call, what should I do? So it's kind of like that question about, like, you get a text message, you don't respond to it, and then how long after that first text message does the validity of this contact even matter? I think it's kind of like that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is actually a very good question, DOY, and it's something that I have done myself. I have a couple of email addresses that are old. I don't use them very often. I use them for junk mail. And every once in a while I'll be cleaning these out, like after 3 months, and I'll see that someone tried to send me a message. They had found me online and were looking for me for an attorney. Obviously, I do respond, and I say, I apologize. I was cleaning out this email address, and I came across your message. I apologize, but I don't use this email address anymore. Here is my current email address. If you still need help with your matter, please reach out to me there, and I'll respond within 24 hours. Otherwise, good luck and best wishes in all your future endeavors. That's really all you can do when that happens. Obviously, you should try to check all your sources. I'm not saying you shouldn't check things frequently, but also try to steer people to just one channel. If you're taking input from a number of different channels, time management becomes exponentially harder. I always tell people in everything, see, now, as my grandmother would say, that's true. When somebody sneezes, it means you're telling the truth. My grandmother believed in such things. But seriously, try to steer people to just one channel. My Gmail address is always the best place to reach me. If you're reaching out to me on another email address, it's probably one that I don't check daily. I try to do it the best I can, but try to steer people so that the most important messages come in on one channel. At DOY, the short answer is there's nothing you can do. If someone sends you a text and you don't respond in timely fashion, you've lost them to to a competitor. Well, there's really nothing you can do. That stuff happens, and it happens even to me. So welcome to the club. It happens.
Okay, thanks, Cliff. A quick question here from Jesse McCarthy. It's a good one too. When planning a day, is it better to do it by the hour or some other time increment?
Jesse, that's a very good question. I'm a lawyer, so I've kind of been conditioned to manage time by the hour, the billable hour. So it's easy for me to do that. Like I say, if you're not a lawyer, you're not used to doing this. But you can do other increments. It's perfectly fine. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I mean, the plan that I gave you in the presentation was based on hour and half-hour chunks because I wanted to make my life easier. But you can do it in shorter periods. Just stick to it. Though, if you're breaking time down into 5-10-minute intervals, it's going to be harder to stay on that. You're going to go over by a minute, which then becomes 5 minutes, which becomes 10 minutes. Don't manage your time so precisely that you can't handle a valid interruption or a bona fide emergency. Sometimes there is blood, and you have to deal with it. As my friend would say, sometimes there is blood and you have to deal with it. So don't manage your time so tightly that you can't budget for a late flight or something like that. Here's one of my tricks, by the way, because I do a lot of flying. Never schedule a layover that is less than 90 minutes. Okay, if you're flying from A to B and then from B to C, make sure to give yourself at least 90 minutes at that B airport. Never schedule your time so tightly that there's only a 15-minute lag between your connecting flight. That will save you a lot of agita. Believe me, you can find. And on the rare occasion where the flight is actually on time and you have that whole 90 minutes in the airport, what should you do? Check your emails. There you go.
Okay, good, Cliff. Hey, I'm looking. Highway actually asked another question too, and Don will get to you, so don't worry. But I think his secondary question is, if a client is supposed to call but doesn't call, what do you do about that?
Okay. If a client is supposed to call and doesn't call, well, first of all, they get caught up in time. They may be poor time managers too. You have to cut them a little bit of slack. What I do is I send them a very short email saying, hey, just let you know, we scheduled a call for 11. I'm standing by. No problem. If you have to reschedule, please give me a call. Otherwise, in 10 minutes, I got to be on something else. Usually that gets me a very prompt response. So there's an answer.
And from Dawn Odion, boy, I'm sure I didn't say that right, Dawn, but I apologize. But she's asking a question. Any book suggestions for a work-from-home mom with 13-month-olds who crawl around 24 hours a day? Good luck with this one, Cliff.
Dawn, I'm just going to be very frank. I don't think you need a book. I think you need alcohol is what you need. I feel your pain. And let me put it this way. There are some time vampires, you kind of have to let them into your life. They are called children. And seriously, you heard my comment before about my friend who asked, is there blood? Always remember, when it comes to children, they get to pick your nursing home eventually. Sooner or later, in the long run, they win. Okay, you do not win. They do. They outlast you. This is not a foot race. This is a marathon. And sooner or later, they get the upper leg on you. So, always find time. I do say, and some people think I'm very cynical about this, there are certain businesses that parents of young children should not attempt. And there are certain things you simply cannot do because at that time of your life, your family takes up 90% of your time, and understandably so. Only do things where you can squeeze it into the times when they're asleep, or otherwise you're not being a parent. That's the only thing that I can suggest to you. The last thing in the world you need right now is a fast-growing, successful tech company. Because that is going to eat up so much of your time that your children will starve and you will end up in prison for neglect. So do not do that. Unless you're wealthy enough that you can afford a nanny or an au pair or someone or a we call them governesses or governors now. I guess there are males that do this. Unless you are wealthy enough to do this, plan your business around your children. They are your higher priority right now.
All right, great, Cliff. I think that's all the time we have for questions. I hope this was helpful to everybody. It was to me. So in closing down here, let me just say, as I kind of reiterate, we do have 2 webinars each month on the first and second Tuesday of the month. You'll notice in July, by the way, that the first Tuesday is the 4th of July, so we're not going to do it on the 4th of July. We're going to do it on the 11th. But our next one is June 20th, and again, it's on IT trends. For those of you who have become familiar with our webinars in the past, this has become kind of a series for us, And this will be done by Budley Freund again, and we kind of do them every trimester, where it just seems that all the trends and changes kind of pile up and give us a lot of really good content to do another one of these. So I encourage you to attend that. Now, in finally closing, Cliff, thanks again for presenting. And to those of you that are still listening, please go to fairfieldcounty.score.org, where you'll find a list of our workshops, webinars, and find out how to sign up for one-on-one counseling with our counselors here at our office in Norwalk. So have a nice day, everybody, and thank you very much for attending. Bye-bye.